I'm joined today by Tim Bornholdt, a passionate technologist and seasoned entrepreneur who's been a founding member at a number of companies, including the Jed Mahonis Group, Quickly, and Turn Signal, to name a few, as well as working on apps used by millions, including the Great Clips app and Little Free Library app, which I'm a big fan of. Tim loves helping people understand how technology can make the world a better place. And last year in 2023, Tim took to the stage with that mission to give a TEDx talk entitled, "Don't Be Intimidated by AI. Help shape its future." Tim, thank you so much for being in my orbit, and thank you so much for joining me today on Cupalo Conversations.
I'm so glad that you asked me here, Lauren. This is going to be a blast.
I agree. And as I mentioned, so I can't help but say huge congratulations, kudos. I am so impressed that you did a TEDx talk. You are the only person I know in my orbit who's done one. And I would love to know more of how this came to be because it is just an incredible accomplishment. So again, congratulations. And thank you for explaining large language models in a way that I can understand using fill in the blanks and a gallon of ice cream. So that was awesome.
It worked out. And like, really, if you saw the talk, the star of the show was my son, who just shouted out the right answer at the right time for that, right? um,
That was awesome.
yeah, I feel like I've accidentally stumbled into this career of talking about AI. I had a friend ask me to speak at his AI conference, and it was because I did another talk earlier in the year about AI, which I again accidentally stumbled into. I there was if you know of Mini Star, they're a group here in Minnesota that talks about technology and kind of does a bunch of events to get people excited about the technology industry here. They did these things called mini AMAs, and they asked for proposals on ideas of what people could talk about. And I said, it'd be really great if somebody talked about ethics and AI. And they said, oh, great. Well, that's you. And I like, no, I want somebody that knows what they're talking about to be the person talking about ethics and AI. But it turned out it was okay. I did it with Damian Reel, who is actually an expert in ethics and AI. He's a lawyer that's done a ton of stuff around it. And but I hung in there enough that again, another friend asked me, hey, why don't you talk about something at my AI conference? And I said, all right, I guess I'll, what can I talk about? And I came up with prompt engineering and large language models because that seemed to be something that I could at least wrap my mind around and feel like I could explain to folks. And I did that talk, and man, that talk was so nerve wracking because you think that this conference was, I asked Justin beforehand, what's the makeup of the audience, right? And he says, well, it's anywhere from people that have never used AI before in their life to people that have PhD dissertations in exactly what you're talking about. And I'm like, well, crap, that is a huge range of possibilities. And so I was sitting next to somebody beforehand that was going to, I was preparing for my talk, and he's like, oh yeah, I've been doing prompt engineering for decades now. And I'm like, well, great. So you're going to sit through my talk, and what am I going to offer on that? Anyways, I'm rambling again. I got through the talk, and someone approached me afterwards and said, I'm the person that's in charge of TEDx in St. Cloud, and we're looking for someone to speak on AI. Would you be interested in speaking? And so it's like, okay, well, third time, I probably need to just jump in and do this. So that's how I got picked. It was just kind of saying yes as the opportunities came along.
Do you think you would do it again? Like, would you go and do another TEDx talk?
Yeah, I think I absolutely would if I had something more insightful to say. It is really a unique opportunity, and I do really enjoy a challenge, especially speaking in front of people and holding a stage and trying to be that right balance of entertaining and informative. And there's really not a whole lot of venues that are quite like the TEDx stage, where it's very regimented in what you do. Like you had to be at 10 minutes. You couldn't use a script. There was no prompter. There were no like key, like the presenter mode with PowerPoint. It was like there were no assistants as to what was coming up. You just had to know your stuff and have it memorized. And it was definitely a 3 month challenge, but it was fun. I would definitely do it again.
You did a great job. I was impressed, like your level of energy, and you seemed really calm and in control. Your opening with the Siri dialogue was really great back and forth. And I was really impressed. If you were nervous, it was unobvious to me and I'm sure everybody else there.
That's super. Like, but beforehand, I looked at my heart rate, and I used to be a runner, and my resting heart rate is below 60 beats a minute. So I usually have a really low heart rate. Before I went out on stage, it was like 138, and it felt like I'd been running for the last 10 minutes, and it was very, very, very nerve wracking. So I'm not sure if that's something that goes away with practice and experience, but I feel like most people that have to go out and be vulnerable on a stage in front of lots of people, I'm sure everybody kind of gets those jitters. But I appreciate you telling me that it didn't come across that way, because it sure felt like it inside.
Oh, that's great. I always enjoy the TEDx talks are wonderful. I think it is so impressive that within 10 minutes you can get the knowledge of folks who have spent years with this craft and spending, decades even turning over these ideas. So kudos to you for that again. And speaking of big, scary life stages to stand on, I'd love to talk to you today about the layoff journey. Unfortunately, so many people in my orbit, and yourself included, have been impacted by layoffs in this year, and especially in 2023, so many were impacted. It's a really difficult stage to stand on because you mentioned vulnerability. You're extremely vulnerable in this state of having to look for another opportunity. It's really difficult to have the rug pulled out from underneath you if you didn't anticipate it. So I would love to talk about that today. I think it would benefit a lot of people who either have been impacted or those who've been fortunate not to, but are terrified of what feels like the inevitable because of the landscape we're in. So I guess my first question, did you see it coming?
Yes, in some ways, no, in others. I was brought into my previous role as a support person, more or less, to kind of help bolster one of their clients. And it was a new client, it was a huge client, and it was my job to kind of come in and be the leader of, from a technological standpoint, and try to really help steady the ship. And after 18 months, I think it was mission accomplished. The company that we were working with is still going and thriving and growing, and it's the best you can hope for as a contractor. But when that contract had ended, there wasn't really much of substance that was coming in to replace my team, and so we were kind of doing internal projects and doing certain things to keep people busy. But that's what it kind of felt like, was busy work, more than it felt like we were doing things that were like contributing to the bottom line of the company, which if you want to keep getting paid, you need to continue to add to that bottom line. So I felt like going into the Christmas break, things were probably going to get shaken up a little bit, but there really wasn't any indication that we were going to get laid off. And then I came in the day after the break, and sure enough, that was that.
Yeah. Well, I'm so sorry that you were impacted that way and had to start off 2024 on that note. Is there is there any way that you would have prepared if you knew, is there any way you would do your preparation for that differently? I guess in light of people who may be nervous about the, layoff possibility for them, what would you do to prepare or do differently?
I think probably just continuing to have candid conversations with your bosses and with management. I think it's always this really weird, awkward dance where people don't want to talk about, oh yeah, we're really iffy on whether we're going to get these clients in the door, or we really need to come in with new lines of market, or maybe even the company's moving in a different direction and doesn't need your skills anymore. It's really hard to figure out what you could have done differently ahead of time. But I think just the more that you have, I think, a strong enough relationship where you can go to your boss and be candid and say, hey, I feel like I'm kind of sitting around, or you kind of get this feeling, right, of things are shifting, and maybe is there anything I can do to help? Can I take something off your plate? Doing the whole managing up thing and seeing if there's ways that you can shoulder more of the responsibility of trying to keep the whole team together and moving forward. I suppose those are certain things that could be done if you were in the same position where you kind of have that feeling of, I feel like I'm unproductive, or I feel like I'm not contributing as much. I don't know. Does that make sense at all?
Unfortunately, a lot of leaders might not be willing to share, even if they know that that's sort of what's around the bend. I guess, would you advise people to, I mean, even on a pragmatic kind of scale or practical scale, like saving money in anticipation of this, is it always good to live like that could happen? Like you could lose your job at any given point. I guess That's something a lot of us don't think about. We go to work thinking it's stable, right? And a lot of people up until 2023 did.
I had it drilled into my head from a very early age. My dad's an accountant, and so being fiscally prudent has long been a tenet of my household. So we were pretty prepared and still have a pretty deep nest that we can stand on. So I was lucky in that regard. But I don't, and I know that it's really a lot easier said than done with the way that our society has been going the last few years, especially. It's really, really hard to try to live below your means in order to, you know, either maintain a certain lifestyle that you're used to, or to be able to just bank up enough money to have something to live on. But yeah, I guess finding some way to squirrel away some money so that if you do get an unexpected layoff with no severance, you can at least be able to survive a few storms here and there. Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice in general. I think one thing that I've been kind of struggling with was, even like while I was in that kind of period of uncertainty at my last job, I spent a lot of time trying to just figure out what I wanted to do, because I think I can't be unique in this, but in my career, I feel like I just have been going more or less just with the winds and feeling like, this seems like a good path. I'm just going to go start my own business, and I'm just going to go over and BCT over here, which I know that's not everybody's case. Don't get me wrong, but it's, you get prescribed, like, high school goes to graduation, graduation goes to your first internship, that internship turns into your first job, and you just kind of keep going down the path that's easy. And I think that for me, at least, this layoff hit me the hardest because I didn't really have like a next step of where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do. I had some vague ideas of who I was as a person and what my values were, but it's just, the whole thing just sucks, having to translate that feeling of like who I am and what I care about into like a job and into something that has values. And then there's the whole like, well, do you put values tied to your, like, do you derive your self-worth through your job, and all those feelings? Like, Lauren, it's been a crazy 3 months trying to like work through all this stuff and figure out, like, how do you go from, like, like you said, that I have a job and I kind of know what I'm doing, to all of a sudden you're having to like put together a resume and try to convince people that you're worth hiring. It's all just so bizarre.
Yeah. As somebody at your level, and you've started companies, you've kicked some serious ass. I mean, from what I've seen of, like I said, I internet stalked you. I've been very impressed. And what I'm curious about is, somebody at your level who gets laid off, how does it shake your confidence?
100% shook my confidence getting laid off, and after the shock wore off. What's the best way to describe it? It feels like it feels like I've gone through most of my life with imposter syndrome, and you're constantly feeling like you're in this room and you don't belong. Even when I was running my own company, or when I was CTO at another company, or when I'm sitting in a room with other executives, there's always this feeling where I'm like, I don't know, am I saying the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? And it takes time it takes time to build up that confidence, and it only takes one event for all of that confidence, at least for me, to just completely go out the window and be like, well, that's call it a career, that's it. So I don't know, like, I think it doesn't really matter what level you're at when you go from the bottom all the way to the top. I've found that the highest performers are like, at least for me, the ones that are the standout knockouts are the ones that have empathy. And when you have empathy, then you tend to also compare yourself to other people. You tend to try to put yourself in their shoes, and you try to figure out how to build a cohesive unit. And then of course you find a way to like automate yourself out of it. At least as a technologist, that's my job that I'm looking for all the time, right? Is, how do I make myself obsolete? And I think one of the biggest things that made my confidence shake this time around was it's coincided with all of this AI stuff, and watching how fast large language models are getting good at pretty much everything I do for a job, and being able to take these tools, and I've been able to speed my own productivity up tenfold easily, because I can just type in what I want, and with a couple of tweaks it's done. how much longer until somebody else can just do that? They don't need me anymore. And so the confidence just starts to tank and tank and tank. And it's really until you get back out there and put yourself in front of other people. And it's not even about showing your value or your worth. It's just trying to figure out, like, how can I be useful to other people? And the more that I've been putting myself back out there and trying to go on podcasts, go to networking events, go to, I love mentoring at Prime as an example, or speaking with juniors. It's like you kind of start to figure out again, okay, well, where can I provide value? And that's what's been really helping me boost my confidence.
Yeah. No, I think that is an absolutely beautiful way of looking at life in general. Is that sometimes when you connect with another human being and they acknowledge what you've done, how you've impacted their life, even in a conversation, they say, "Wow, like you just blew my mind." And it's like that's why I'm alive. I feel like when you have these moments where people reflect back to you that you've impacted them in a great way. And so imagine as you continue to network, which it's really hard, right? I guess it's the hardest thing, right? Is when your confidence is low is to get out there and network. But would you say that that's been wind in your sails is through this period of time? A lot of people sit at home and they're trying to apply to jobs because that's what you need a job, right? So you're applying and it's completely soulless. It's awful, but it's a kind of a necessary evil. Has the human connection, has meeting with people been, like I said, that air in your lungs in this period of time?
When I first got laid off in January, I started tracking how many meetings that I had with people, with recruiters, with friends, with whoever. And the first month, I think it was like 58 meetings within like a period of 4 weeks. Which again, I have unfair advantages that maybe not everybody has. I already have an established network on LinkedIn that I made 2 posts in and had more invites to coffees than I could have ever wished. So I know how blessed and fortunate I am. But it's definitely that's been what has helped me really keep moving forward. Is I know that at some point, if I don't find a job soon, I'll have to start playing the resume game. But I've been unbelievably fortunate where I've got all of the opportunities that I've applied for and gotten into the next rounds of consideration on were all because I knew somebody that knew somebody. And it's those connections and those friendships that are really what are the key differentiators to finding a job. And so, yeah, it's like, that's really my superpower is I like talking to people and I like learning about people and finding ways to be useful, even if it's a short little piece of advice here or there. That's been the what's given me my confidence back of knowing what I bring to the table.
Yeah, well, and it's not accidental. So because of who you are, you have this amazingly robust network of people who want to show up and do whatever they can for you. So I think, again, kudos to you and your character in the world because you've done a lot to magnetize people to you. So I do think it has been a particularly tough year. I think that AI does scare a lot of people. I think there's a number of discussions out there about how this is going to impact more than just software engineering, other white collar jobs. And I guess, do you feel though that this is really that different of a tool from a Stack Overflow or a Google search where ultimately like you still need to think, you need to provide a lot of you have to have good problem solving skills. You can't like the tool is only as good as the user in a lot of ways. I'm curious, do you think we're giving it more emphasis because it's the next shiny object or is this really drastically different from the other tools that have continuously been introduced into our lifestyle?
I guess for me personally, this tool is the hype. It is everything that it lives up to, but it isn't. It's because I've spent the last 2 years playing with it and understanding how it works and how you have to feed it the right prompts in order to get it to give you back something useful. And that's something I've been learning as I've been going out and speaking with people. Is it's really it will require everybody to rethink how they work with computers and rethink how you can get the most out of these tools, because it's not like a Google search. Like a Google search is where there is, like, if you picture like a library and you're searching for something specific, like a Google search will take you down the aisle to the right section using the Dewey Decimal System, and then you hang a right and then you find that book and you pull it off the shelf and you thumb through it and you find the fact. Like, that's a Google search. This is more of, you go to a librarian who has read every single book ever written and has perfect recall of it and can synthesize things on a magnitude that no human can possibly do. And you go to that person and say, hey, here's my problem. How would you solve it? And then it spits out an answer. Sometimes that answer is complete gobbledygook. Sometimes that answer is just pure genius that you wouldn't have expected. And that's been the beauty of using this tool. Is I really think it's a perfect mirror of ourselves, because all these large language models are doing are parroting back English language or whatever language you're prompting it with, but it's just parroting back human expression. It doesn't actually do thinking or come up with stuff. So it's really interesting of just understanding how to put yourself in the right position to prompt it to get back the answers. I think you had the original question you had was like, is this going to be the thing that impacts everybody, or is this just another kind of flash in the pan? I really do think everybody needs to be paying attention to this and learning how to use them. And even, take my wife as an example. She's a secretary at a high school. She uses it for all sorts of things that make her seem to everybody else like this superhuman rock star, where really it's that I'm sorry for blasting you like this, Shannon. I don't mean to call you out in front of all your coworkers, but it really is like just the fact that if you know how to use these tools, you do stand above everybody else just by proxy. So yeah, I really recommend that people start playing around with this stuff and figuring it out.
How have you used AI in the job search? I'm curious because you have been messing around with it for a few years now. How has it recently come into your world, and how have you been using it, I guess, as you've navigated this job journey?
The first thing I did when I got laid off was I went and made, and this probably speaks about how nerdy I am. This being the first thing I did, I went and made a GPT, which ChatGPT uses as these little programs you can build for yourself. And what I did was I prompted it and said, you are my job filter. I'm going to tell you about my requirements. So my salary requirements, my location requirements, the types of jobs I like doing, the languages I like working in, just anything around, and then culture, like a small or large culture, all that kind of stuff. I put it all into a prompt. And then I said, I'm going to feed you job postings. And your job is to rank these job postings in these different categories, 1 to 5, whether they fit in with what I'm looking for or not. Because there's so many job postings out there where it's just, you go blind after a while reading them, because it's just like you have to not only read English, but then there's like the subtext that all job postings have, or when they say things like rockstar developer, what they mean is someone I can pile 80 hours of work onto and they won't complain about it. Like it's all those little like nuanced subtext things that companies like to do. So you can feed all of this stuff into your own GPT. Then you can take it to the next level and say, help me find the hiring manager on LinkedIn. And then you can go in and find the hiring manager. And then you can say, help me craft a message that's tailored to this hiring manager, to this job, to help get the next, foot in the door. And then it gives you, and then you can go in and give it your own language and your own flair, because everyone kind of knows what AI generated text feels like. It doesn't feel like anything. So you go and give it your own little personality, and then, go and write cover letters. It's like I use for the few jobs that I've gotten to the next level on that have required cover letters. You just go in and say, here's the job, here's the gist of what I want to get across, write me a cover letter, and there it is. And so those are some of the I think kind of low hanging fruit ways that I've used AI to help me out in the job search. And that one of being able to go and kind of go through that process of just have it go through. And all those hiring managers are using AI tools on you, right? Like they're using them on us to try to filter through our things. Why don't we use the tools on them to filter through their BS job postings? Like it's the same medicine both ways. So if you're not playing that game, like then you're going to have a hard time finding a job, I think, in this day and age.
Yeah. So is that something that you would recommend then everybody who is looking for a job, or is it specific to like, because engineering jobs are so almost scripted in terms of like the languages that are needed, as opposed to like a sales job where a lot more of it is the soft skills and stuff? I'm curious, like, is this something that would be applicable to anybody who's looking for a job, or specific to those who have more of that kind of ability to filter out, I guess, or be more prescriptive?
I think that even within a sales job, if we go down that route, I think even sales jobs have differences to them. Like company size, what you're selling, all those things could be. If you do, like me, derive a lot of value from the job you're doing, maybe someone is a mission-driven salesperson and wants to be selling on behalf of a nonprofit or on behalf of some climate thing. I don't know. Like, I think that you can absolutely tune everyone has preferences of what they're looking for in a job. Even if your preference is, I'm a cold-hearted capitalist and I want as much cash and as big a bonus as I possibly can. Cool. Put that into the GPT and use that to filter through jobs that have low pay or whatever. Like, I think that this is absolutely, like, the cool thing about large language models is you can tune them to do whatever you want to fit whatever sort of feeling that you've got for this and whatever kind of roles you're looking for. So I think anybody could use this and benefit from it.
We so tether our identity largely to what our role is, what we like, what our title is, what we earn, where we work. And when we get laid off, or we get fired, or we have to leave, and we're now no longer married to a job, our sense of self can really, we talked about confidence, but are there any tools that you're using to help you navigate that component? That's a big part of being laid off and kind of figuring out what's next. I know I've read some of your blog posts, which are amazing. And I feel like I almost feel like I'm guilty, like I'm reading your journal. I love how candid you are, and it's refreshing. How are you navigating that component of this, both the post layoff and the job search?
I think I've had bad anxiety for the last 10 years of my life, and I've found over that 10 years that the only real way to get over anxiety has been to talk. And whether that comes in the form of getting coffee with a friend, or talking with my wife at the end of the night, going to a therapist, or blogging and journaling, having the conversation going is just, even getting the thoughts out of your head and writing them down on paper just makes it feel more like it's no longer this abstract fear that's in your head. It's like, oh, this is what I'm afraid of. Like, why am I afraid of that? Or you could be like, oh, okay, I know why I'm afraid of this or why I'm anxious about it. Now I have something concrete I can work backwards and try to solve. And so, yeah, I mean, journaling and blogging is kind of my latest attempt at just putting my thoughts out there and seeing if things resonate with folks. And it's a long game, right? Like, I'm not here to try to become the next viral sensation of a blogger or a newsletter person or podcaster. I really just want to help as many people as I can go through that are going through a similar journey that I'm going through, because we're all in this together. It's really like we rely on each other so much more than depression and anxiety have us think. I think especially being someone that helped start several companies, you kind of feel when you're at the top, like the weight is all on my shoulders, but it's not. You surround yourself with people that want to help you succeed and want you to be successful, because if one of us succeeds, we all succeed. It's a great feeling to share that. So I think that that if other folks are kind of in the same spot where you're struggling with who am I, that's been the biggest struggle of the last several years. Is I've really wrapped my identity around being an entrepreneur, and I took so much pride in starting my mobile app company, and I still do. It's still going strong. My business partners are still going strong at it, but it just after a while, the pressures of running a business, it didn't really feel like I was getting the value out of it that I was hoping, and it wasn't as fulfilling as I was hoping. And so it's like, okay, well, then what? And it's tough in our society, because it's like you need to bring in money somehow. Like we all need money to live and pay rent and eat food and all that. So you can't take too long dwelling on who you are and what kind of values you have. But it tends to be what I've experienced over the last few months is the stuff that you're the most ashamed about and the stuff that you're the most embarrassed about tends to be the stuff that actually is who you are. And as soon as you like embrace those parts of you, things feel so much better. Like an anxiety attack is nothing more than those parts you've been shoving down coming up and saying, hey, you need to honor us too. Like we're part of this conversation, whether or not you want us to be. And you can harness anxiety. Like that's what I think honestly makes me a good software architect is I can use that anxiety to worry about every possible way an app can be hacked, deleted, destroyed, you name it. So you have to figure out how to like take all those parts of you that you don't like and that you're uncomfortable with and really own them and bring them out. That's how you're really going to be able to be your true self.
Yeah, something you touched on, I would love for you to share more of because I do have a lot of people that I interact with, and myself included, having just started Cupalo 7 months ago. There's this real hype around and romanticism to being a founder, to starting a business. And I think there's so much bullshit along with it. I think it's hilarious because there's all this stuff out there of, you spin up a side hustle or while you keep your W-2 and it's so easy, or you just quit your W-2 and start a company and you'll be flush with cash. There's so much smoke and mirrors out there, people selling you on the dream. Did you get sold ever on the dream?
Yeah, I mean, I thought for sure, like if when we first started Jed Mahonis Group, we had this, we wrote down like our vision for the future, and we dreamed big. You know, we thought we were going to be owning our own like twin towers situation. I'd have my own tower filled with all my companies, and my business partner would have his, and we would be off to the races, and we'd be wildly successful. And you know, it's true. But I think the thing that I've learned, having been an entrepreneur for my whole career now, is like I still, the reason I love being an entrepreneur is that I love building. I love seeing something come from nothing, taking an idea and being able to hold it somehow tangibly. There's just no greater feeling in the world than that. I don't need to be a hedge fund level of wealth to be successful, and really money is a tool, and figuring out how, like, what is your purpose of getting into being an entrepreneur? Are you trying to like set yourself up for a early retirement, or are you trying to, you know, you have a vision that will, you know, build the next big thing that will save us all? Being clear on why you're being an entrepreneur, I think now that I'm on like going into my next opportunity, it's not like I'm going to jump in and just be like, yeehaw, I'm an entrepreneur, let's do it. It's more so being intentional of like, okay, what, there are pros and cons to being an entrepreneur. Are the cons worth it? And is this the path that will actually get me to what I actually want? That's kind of been the thing of what I've been trying to myself figure out, is like, what do I want? Do I want to be working 80 hours a week to say I'm an entrepreneur, or do I want to hang out with my 7-year-old and 5-year-old? Like that's really the important thing.
Yeah, when you talked about before about your sense of self and who you are, do you think that's the same thing as knowing your why, your purpose? Is that the same thing as who you are?
For me it is. Yeah, I'm not sure for everybody, but yeah, for me certainly it's knowing, yeah, having all that in line is definitely what I've been trying to figure out, is how can I find a job that will allow me to have autonomy to build and to build something that is useful for people, without being encumbered by, I don't know if I would make it in a big organization. I just don't know if I have the ability to navigate gigantic hierarchies of people and process and red tape and all of that. It's like I want to build something cool with cool people, and let's go do it.
You've had a lot of accomplishments. Like I said, you've done a lot of great things in your life. What would you say professionally is the thing you're most proud of?
Man, you know, you've said that a few times of how successful I've been, and I feel like maybe I've scrubbed enough of the failures out of the internet to account for that. Uh, I think I think the I don't know. It's really hard. Like at this point in my career, it's very hard to pinpoint the thing that I'm like the most proud of. I think just maybe the thing I've been the most proud of lately is kind of realizing that work accomplishments are just one part of life, and the biggest win is when you can win in all parts of life, whether that's family, friends, spirituality, whatever you fitness, health, whatever way you define it. I think that's been probably the thing I'm most proud of, is just finally coming to that realization and spending time figuring out like how can I fit work and still work hard and still be building cool big things, but also being able to have energy at the end of the day to actually be present with my family and not just playing games on my phone for the rest of the night.
Was that a lesson, and a critical one, but was that a lesson that you learned just through trial and error, or was there an external source of inspiration like a book or a person, or like how did that come into your understanding?
I think just my wife more than anything. And more so just I think being forced to be unemployed is probably the biggest thing that's helped with it, because it has really been go 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 for the last 12 years for me. I even like one of my first vacations that I went on was my honeymoon. It was like an all inclusive thing, and they had we did a couples massage. And right before we went into the couples massage, I made the mistake of checking my email, and in that
Ooh.
email was a message from a client saying, if you don't finish the project within 1 week, I'm going to fire you and we're going to go someplace else. And so I spent the entire like massage so tense, unable to enjoy it, and like the whole rest of the honeymoon was just, I got to get back so I can save this project because it's a really big deal for us. And I feel like that the first time that I went on vacation after leaving my own company when I was CTO at the last agency, that was like one of the first times where I'm like, I don't even have to bring my laptop with me. I'm just gonna. Of course I did, and of course I got called, and of course I did work, but it was the first step towards being like, you know what, I don't need to just be working all the time. I can enjoy what's around me. And I just got back from we booked a trip like a week before I got laid off, a non-refundable trip to Nickelodeon Resort. So we're like, you know what, we're going to Nickelodeon Resort, we're going to enjoy this. And I left my phone in the room more often than not. I was just completely going down water slides. I got slimed every single day. We played with all the Paw Patrol character. It was the best vacation I think I've ever been on, and we got a couples massage while we were there. I have never been more relaxed and in tune with the universe than that massage right there. And so it's like that's the arc of going from stressed out on a beach trying to get a couples massage to not stressed out whatsoever in just pure zoned out zen. Yeah, it's just taken experience to get through it, I guess.
That's awesome. I'm glad that you got your couples massage finally after all this time. And I am curious. I know hindsight's 2020. Would you go back on your honeymoon in that moment? You get the email. Would you have said, "Okay, I guess we're getting fired," or would you still scramble and try to fix it? I guess what would you do now if you were back if you could go back in time?
I think, well, first of all, I probably would notify the client that I was going on a honeymoon before leaving for the honeymoon. I'm a habitual yes sayer. I say yes to everything because I want to do everything. And I'm learning as I get older and more experienced that when you don't say no enough, you wind up collapsing under the weight of all the yeses, and you can't do great work if you're constantly saying yes to everything. So it's been hard for me to keep saying no. But I think if I was back in my shoes with the client emailing me in that exact scenario now, I would probably reach out via email and say, hey, I'm on my honeymoon right now. I don't need to be threatened about losing this project. You will get it done. And like, we'll just touch base then. But it's a lot easier to say when I'm a little more stable in my mid 30s than when I was like a fresh business owner in my early 20s.
Oh, yeah. No, I appreciate that. Well, speaking of saying yes, my last question to you is, what do you want to say yes to in 2024?
That's a really great question. I think I would say yes to more experiences with my friends and family. Finding ways to go out of my way and spend money that I don't like spending, or giving up my comfortable sweatpants at the end of the day and going out and hanging out with, getting a beer with friends. It's like the more I can say yes to social, out there, in person, face to face interactions, I think that's what I would say yes to, and will say yes to more of here in 2024.
Yeah, I get it. It is hard to leave the sweatpants behind.
They're so comfortable.
I know. Well, Tim, I can't thank you enough for joining me today on Cupalo Conversations and sharing more about your journey, because there are so many people, at all levels and in all different verticals who are going through this journey, just like yourself. And I think a big component, a big moral here, I should say, is that human connection, just getting out and meeting people and realizing your value is bigger than the job or the title or the salary you command. It's what are you adding to the value to the person in front of you. And I think that's where we get lost sometimes when we stay home in our sweaties and we're chilling. We sometimes forget how much good we can do just with one person, let alone an entire organization. So thank you so much for sharing with me today what that's been like for you. And I wish you all the best. I'm so excited for your next journey, your next chapter right around the corner here. And it sounds like you have incredibly important goals. I mean, I think we can all learn a lesson from you about what we can do to connect with the people in our life and really value the balance, finding balance in a lot of different ways. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me, and I'm so excited for you at your stage of where you're at with Cupalo. It's incredible. Like, the newsletters you put out are phenomenal. The stories you tell every week, I'm blown away by how much I can relate to them. And as hard and terrible as being an entrepreneur can be, I think it's only hard and terrible when you don't have that like mission and goal in mind that can kind of keep pushing you forward when you get into those hard moments. And it seems like you are so good at connecting people and finding opportunities and doing what you do. I think you're going to be off to a lifetime of success running this business. So I appreciate being part of your journey here early on in the early days. And I can say I got to be on the ground floor a little bit with this. And thanks again for the opportunity to speak with you today.
Of course. Well, that means a lot. I am very excited. I think we've got big things on the horizon.